G'day guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Tim, and on today's episode we're looking at what the Federal Reserve are up to and why it is causing the stock markets to be red and what impact this may have on Bitcoin and the altcoins over the next 6 to 12 months. Let's get stuck into this one. Okay, so let's have a look here at the Nasdaq, the tech stocks. So what we're looking at here is a monthly chart with this blue line, and the blue shaded area is the 30-month simple moving average. Now, what you will notice, let's start right down here in September 2011. You'll notice that it bounces off the 30-month moving average, and for the first couple years, it has a rocky start. See that there? It just goes up and down a little bit, and then it gets into its groove through this middle section before it crashes back down. And it does the same thing again here, moving from January 2016. It has a rocky start. And then it gets into its groove, and then it crashes back down. And then from December 2018, it does the same thing. It has a rocky start, and we had the COVID crash there as well. And then it gets into its groove. Now, this little section in the middle where it gets into its groove is what we call the risk-on time in the market. And if we look up what risk-on means, this is Investopedia, risk on versus risk off. So it's all about the appetite for risk. So when the markets are up and about, there is a greater appetite for riskier assets, such as Bitcoin. So that is why this is the area where Bitcoin is most likely to do well, as opposed to these points down here where the stock market is struggling. Now, what I've actually done here is I've marked in where the peaks of Bitcoin have been on every cycle. So this point here was where the peak occurred for the 2013 cycle. So Bitcoin essentially went up, did the double peak, peak 1, and then peak 2 was there, and it went back down, and it actually bottomed out at the same time here as the stock markets. And then 2017 did a similar thing. Bitcoin peaked at this point here, and then it crashed back down at the same time as the stock markets. And then we had a peak here in 2019 and 2020, and it crashed back down there at the same time as the stock markets. And then we had the 2021 peak at this point on April 13, April 14, and now we're somewhere here, okay? So you can see that Bitcoin always peaks during the risk-on time in the stock market when the stock market is up and about. Now, this is a very similar concept to the way that the alts interact with Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin is up and about, that's when the altcoins are up and about. So there's a risk-on approach that the altcoins have to Bitcoin in the same way that there's a risk-on approach that Bitcoin has to the stock markets, okay? Now, why am I talking about this right now? Well, as you can see, the stock markets, this is the S&P 500, this is in the last day, is red. And if we look at the other ones, let's have a look at the Dow Jones. Red, down 1%. The ASX 200 in Australia, down 0.5%. All Ords, which is Australia as well, down 0.5%. China, down 2%. So you can see that they're all currently down. And if we look at the futures are indicating that there's more downside to come. Now, if this was just one red day, it wouldn't matter too much. But let's have a look at what the Federal Reserve are doing at the moment. So right here, I've got the Federal Reserve website, and they've released the minutes from their open market committee. Now, what's caused all this redness in the stock markets is the word taper. So I won't read through all of this, but you can see that the Federal Reserve are talking about potentially tapering their bond purchases. Now, what this might mean, it's causing some apprehension in the stock markets. And if it makes the stock markets rocky, it could therefore make Bitcoin rocky, which will therefore make the alts rocky. Now, let's have a look at some of the headlines here. So I won't go into all the detail. You can look up this as well. You just type in Fed minutes in the news and you'll see these articles. So Federal Reserve preparing to taper this year, July minutes show. Officials debated timing of taper. Federal minutes show most officials see taper starting this year. Fed minutes likely to detail bond buying taper talk, inflation worries. This is what the talk is all about. So it could mean that the stock markets start to correct. Now, we've seen some redness. Now, whether it's like a minor dip and then bounces back off again, like it's yet to be seen. But it's something to keep an eye on, because if the stock markets start to come down, it will, as we've seen in the past in both 2013 and also the 2017 peak, it will bring Bitcoin down as well. Okay, so the last thing I'd like to take a look at here is the US dollar index, which is the DXY, and it tends to have somewhat of an inverse correlation with Bitcoin. So when the US dollar is doing really well, Bitcoin is usually not doing very well, and vice versa. So we can see here, during the March 2020 COVID crash, the US dollar was rising in value. And then when Bitcoin reached a peak down here, the US dollar had gone down. Now it's starting to have a bit of a breakout to the upside, it appears. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. It could find resistance, but it appears to be breaking above that level. And we've just had a W double bottom, which is a very bullish sign for the dollar. So this might be indicating that people are moving away from some of the riskier assets and more into US dollars. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. It's currently at that breakout point, so we'll see what happens in the near future. Okay, so in summary, what does this mean for Bitcoin over the next 6 to 12 months? What we can see is that the stock markets appear to be more apprehensive at the moment. And we know that when the stock markets are apprehensive, we're moving into the risk off phase where Bitcoin generally doesn't do that well. And that combined with the monthly volume, which has been in a downtrend since April, is making me think that the probability of crypto and Bitcoin going down from this point onwards is much higher than making all-time highs. It's hard to see Bitcoin and crypto doing all-time highs with low volume while the stock markets are in a state of apprehension. So that's the concern I have for crypto over the next 6 to 12 months. However, the flip side of the coin is that during those times of apprehension and fear in the market, that's also the ideal time to get some bargains. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video, but we just need to keep an eye on what's happening in the markets in general. And it really can give us some clues about what may happen to Bitcoin and the altcoins in the coming days ahead. So anyway, please like and subscribe. My name's Tim, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.